So let's have a look at our first chord, which is the chord of E minor, and this is a very, very good one because not only do you only need 2 fingers, which is really great, it also comes up in tons and tons of songs, so let's see how it goes. So for this chord, we're going to put our second finger on the 2nd fret, 1, 2, on the A string, all right, and this finger here, your 3rd finger goes just beneath it on the 2nd fret again of the D string. And the chord will sound like this. So one of the very common things that can happen when we start is the chord sounds like this. And that's because the fingers are laying flat across the strings, they're not pointy enough. So if you have your thumb, the further up the thumb goes on the neck rather than lower like that. If the thumb goes lower, your fingers naturally go flatter, you see. So if you can keep them, the thumb towards the top, keep them pointy as possible and press down quite hard. Not so hard that it's really hurting your hand, but just enough so the strings ring. And keep them in the middle too. Don't touch the fret wire because then it doesn't matter how hard you press, it's not going to ring. So keep them pointy, keep them in the middle and keep them pressed down, and hopefully the chord with a little bit of practice will sound like that. Now the other thing you can do, which is really great, instead of strumming the chord, just play the chord and then play the individual notes, so the E, the B, the G, the D, the A and the E, just to make sure everything's ringing really well. That attention to detail will really, really help you out. So now you've got your E minor chord and it's sounding really good, all the strings are ringing and you can remember the shape. That's very good. What do we do now? That's a very good question. Now we play with the band. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to strum this chord with a drummer and you're going to play along with me. Now I should tell you just before we start a few important things. If you've ever heard a band counting when they're going 1, 2, 3, 4. The reason they are doing that is because that is the speed that you're going to play at. All right, so listen to the counting. You're going to start playing on the next beat 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we start playing. All right. Now, if you make a mistake, if the chord goes wrong or it sounds bad, just stop. That's all right. That can happen when we start. And wait for the beat to go round. Wait for it to go back to number 1 and just start again. Continue doing that. Do it over and over again. Might take a few goes. All right. So here we go. Let's have a little go with the band. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm just letting it ring here. I've stopped counting now. Hopefully you remember where you are. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, very well done. I was watching that. That was very good. You did well there. So once you've got your E minor chord, it's sounding great and you can play with the drums, there's always a little something extra you can do. So let's have a look at our pro tip for this chord. So my pro tip for this chord is something called a hammer-on. Now normally we're playing our chord like this. But what we can do is we can hammer on onto beat 1 onto these strings, so you get this sound. And that sounds really cool. This is a little tricky at first, but what you're doing is start ever so slightly on beat 1 off the chord, so you get this sound, just an open string sound, and then you're just adding those fingers, but really press them down, because that's why it's called a hammer-on. You've got this. But first, when you do this, it might sound like this. You might not get any sound at all, but just practice hammering without strumming. You get that type of sound. And when you add the strum, it sounds really good. And you're just adding them on beat 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1,